see the screen? Yes, the students, you can see the screen.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, ma'am, we can see the screen.
Okay, so today we are going to discuss how to make complex sentences and formal sentences. There are 10 possible ways you can make your sentences complex and formal, because it is really crucial to at least make 5 to 6 or maximum 7 to score in order to score 7 bands in IELTS. And if you have more ways, more understanding regarding complex sentences, you can achieve more bands in IELTS writing, specifically in IELTS writing and in IELTS speaking part 3. Because in part 1 you have an introduction session, you can be as informal as you can, because that is completely regarding you, your own personality, your own neighbors, your study, your workplace, and everything regarding you. So there's no need to use a complex language for speaking part 1 specifically. But for part 3, there is usually a journal view which they can ask you. So you should try to at least use a few sentences, complex sentences, which will eventually increase your score in IELTS speaking. So these sentences and the structures which you learn today, you will eventually, because now we know that you can use gerunds, you can use conditional clauses, you know, you can use because to make complex sentences, but you don't know where to use them, why to use them. So in this session you will actually understand that where and when you should use these words, like although, because, relative clauses, where to use them. So this session will be regarding that. Let's commence with it. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, so yes. Complex sentences are basically two or more clauses joined together to make one sentence. Okay, what are the meaning of clause? Okay, clauses mean is a clause mean where you have a subject and predicate. Predicate means that something is showing that what is actually subject doing. Like Sarah is sleeping in the couch. In the couch, sleeping in, sleeping verb ho gaya, in the couch. Where she is doing, that is predicate. So where there are basically two or more clauses joined together to make one sentence. There are a lot of ways of doing this. So we will look into the sentences which actually work like an complex sentences, which actually doesn't look complex, but they are. For example, this is a simple sentence. You can easily understand that this is actually a simple sentence we have. But how you will make this sentence sound and make it complex? Firstly, we can do a comparison. This sentence is slightly more complex than the previous one. After adding more complex, then more, and then when you will add more, and then the sentence will become complex. And this is called comparison. When you compare two things, the sentence eventually become a complex. It doesn't sound complex, but it becomes a complex. This sentence is slightly more complex than the previous one. This is a simple sentence, right? This is a simple sentence. We understood. Okay. Then here we did a comparison with the previous sentence. This sentence is slightly more complex than the previous one. Then we have the contrast. You can do the contrast between two things. This sentence is complex, whereas the first one was simple. The first one was simple, and this where we added whereas. Whereas actually used for contrasting two things. Then the third thing what you can do is add a reason. The previous sentences were more complex because, here you give the reason with because they compared two things. Then what is the fourth way? possible to make a sentence complex. You should give a purpose. We need to use complex sentences in order to make our writing sound more academic. So when you add in order to, you're giving a purpose that for this purpose to make your writing sound more academic. This is the purpose. We need to use complex sentences. Concision. कंसीजन का मतलब होता है रियायत करना, यानी आप कहते हैं ना कोई कुछ कंसेशन कर दें, तो उसी से आया कंसीजन। कंसीजन के लिए, कंसेशन के लिए आपने क्या यूज करना है? ऑल्दो दीज सेंटेंसेस आर मोर कॉम्प्लेक्स, दे आर स्टिल इजी टू अंडरस्टैंड। यानी इसमें रियायत होगी ना कि हालांकि ये जो हैं सेंटेंसेस कॉम्प्लेक्स बन गए हैं, पर स्टिल easy to understand, we can understand them easily. Then what's the next thing we have here is conditionals. भी अभी मैंने आपको ये बताया था कि कॉम्प्लेक्स सेंटेंसेस बनाने के लिए अगर आप लोगों के प्रीवियस लेक्चर्स में आपके पास बिकॉज एट दैट मोमेंट मैंने आपको स्लाइड्स प्रोवाइड नहीं की थी, तो these slides will eventually help you to understand the complex sentences and to understand how you should start writing complex sentences and practice writing complex sentences, because you guys now have the templates. Though we did not finish the all templates, but this time I really want you all to start practicing complex sentences while you are writing, so your writing will eventually improve. So in order to follow the templates as well. So, and here we have conditionals. How you can make a sentence conditional? By adding if. If you use complex sentences, you will get a higher score. So this is how we make a conditional sentence, by adding if. Then here we have time phrases. Okay, whenever you use after, before, whenever, these are called time phrases. Whenever examiners see complex sentences, they jump off for joy. They jump for joy because they love to see this complex sentences, and they know that you have an understanding how to produce an effective essay. So add a time phrases like after, before, whenever. Then we have third thing, ing nouns. This is what I had told you in the beginning, that you have to use ing sentences in order to get more marks, more scores for IELTS writing. Starting your sentence with an ing form is another way of making your writing more formal. Starting, here we use the word with ing, starting, right? Then we have here emphasize. You need to emphasize on a certain thing, because this kind of a sentence actually makes a great impact on examiner's mind, that they actually evaluate you on different level. When you actually make a sentence like that, what you really need to do when you begin a sentence with what you really need to do is ensure that you use a variety of complex sentences. See, not it doesn't mean that you have to make 7 sentences with because. That is wrong. Okay? So you need a variety of complex sentences because you need to show the grammatical range as well. And this is the only possible way to do so. Then you have to use the relative pronouns. You could try extending your points with a relative clause, which is one of the relative pronouns. Okay, which will certainly make your sentences longer. So this is one way to use the relative pronouns in your sentences and make your sentences long. The eventual mean to make a sentence long, it's mean to give a whole thought in that specific one sentence instead of making so many simple sentences. So this is actually the proper way to add more sentences. Okay, so firstly we will go in the more complex structure, that what is actually the comparison way, what are the possible way to use the comparisons in complex sentences. This sentence is slightly more complex than the previous one, so you use more and then to make it more sound complex and making it a complex sentence. The other way we have is this sentence is far more, we added far here, far more complex than any of the sentences that I have used before. Then you can say this sentence is twice as complex as the previous one because it compares two things. Understood? You added because and twice as complex. You use twice here. This also makes a sense of comparison and it eventually make the sentence complex. Then what is the next sentence we have to make the sentence sound comparison? The reason why this sentence is more complex is that it compares two things, which means that the analysis is much deeper. The reason why, here we use why, then here we use relative pronoun which. So it eventually, and you also did a comparison more. So eventually the whole sentence sounds more complex than any other sentence. I hope this actually elaborates and clear your thoughts regarding the comparison sentences. Okay. Although you can also use although to make a comparison. Although this sentence is an improvement on the first one, it is not as complex. You use here as complex as the last one. So here is the comparison, as you're using as. Understood? Then complex sentences are much better than simple sentences, which you learn as a beginner. This sentence compares two things, and for this reason, it is considerably more complex than the one which only mentions one thing. Means complex sentences are much better than किससे better है? Simple sentences better है. So here you are added much and then. So you compare two sentences here. Complex sentence को compare किया गया किससे? Simple sentence से, which you learn as a beginner. This sentence compares two things and for this reason it is considerably more complex than the one which only mentions one thing. यानी जितनी ज्यादा चीजों को compare किया जाएगा वो उतना ज्यादा complex हो सकता है. Here is a real example for you. It may be worth paying a little extra to support a local business rather than basing your shopping decision based on price and convenience. You added ing with rather than. So it is actually making the sentence more complex than any. So yes. Oh, I hope you all understood the comparison here, and we will move forward towards the, yeah, the slide is not completed. So we will do the rest of them tomorrow and we'll begin for the